A few months ago, I made a video on multiple players that I believed were about to be traded, and as we slowly creep into the NFL season, well, you can anticipate some more players potentially moving teams. Now, obviously, I never hit on each and every single player in one of these lists, but for the most part, I'd like to say that the analysis tends to be more accurate than not, which is why a lot of my subscribers and a lot of Mike Mafia like these videos. So before we get to the content, I just want to remind you guys, in the middle of September, I'm giving away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. If you could take a moment to sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm, that would also be appreciated. And now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I must give you a little bit of a warning. I'm recording this on August 22nd, 2021, and I anticipate maybe some of these players may have already been traded by the time this video comes out. I'm currently in Italy, guys. I wanted to make sure I got a decent amount of content to you guys, so hope you guys can understand. And if there's a slip up, make sure to call me out in the comments. And of course, if I miss out on anyone, also mention it in the comment section down below, because we tend to do these lists every 2 to 3 months. But the first player is a very obvious player that we have to get out of the way, because Shaun Watson has heard his name in trade rumors for almost a year now, ever since the conclusion of last season, where a viral clip went out of JJ Watt apologizing to Deshaun Watson for them wasting a practical MVP type year from Deshaun Watson. His name has been surrounded in trade rumors, primarily because he feels underappreciated by the Houston Texans and the fact that he is not involved in many personnel decisions. Now, there is a disclaimer in regards to this situation. Well, in actuality, there are multiple disclaimers in Deshaun Watson's situation. The first one being that he is currently undergoing an investigation for a civil misconduct / assault case that we've covered on this channel extensively, and we probably will bring you guys an update on that soon. But assuming Deshaun Watson's situation goes well and he is allowed to even play this season, he never wanted to play for the Houston Texans this upcoming season to begin with. He felt alienated by the hiring of general manager Nick Caserio. He felt like he didn't have his input met when they decided, well, the Houston Texans were deciding on a brand new head coach, and eventually that takes us to where we are now. The other disclaimer would be that typically if a blockbuster trade for a quarterback was to ever happen, it wouldn't happen in the preseason. It would probably happen more towards the offseason, because being a quarterback of a team is a very complicated process. You can't just execute a mid-season trade for a quarterback, teach him your entire team's offensive system, and expect him to succeed right away. These types of things take time. It takes time for a quarterback to develop chemistry with his brand new teammates, his wide receivers, his tight ends, and of course, his coaches and offensive coordinators. So as a result, I do believe Deshaun Watson may get traded. I just feel like this would be shelved until after this upcoming season, unless if he has to miss the season due to some sort of misconduct. Then I can imagine the Houston Texans moving him anyway. The Texans already have several contingency plans in the event they do move on from Deshaun Watson. They drafted Davis Mills this past year in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. They signed Tyrod Taylor, who for some reason every single time this man starts in front of a rookie, that rookie tends to start over him at some point and perform remarkably. But I had to include Deshaun Watson on this list because, well, it'd be pretty strange if he wasn't included on this list. Up next, we have a fairly strange addition, and to be honest, not one that I really could make sense out of, and that is cornerback CJ Henderson, the 9th overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft. Now, the only reason CJ Henderson has found himself in these lists and in trade rumors is because Jeremy Fowler tweeted this: a surprise. Multiple team executives believe that Jaguars cornerback CJ Henderson, the 9th overall pick in 2020, is available via trade. Jacksonville has given the impression in some league circles circles that it's shopping CJ Henderson, a high pedigree player, 1 year into his rookie deal. Now, a source says things are good with the team and Henderson, who just returned from the COVID-19 reserve list at the time of this tweet, so maybe they hold on to him, but the team likes its corners and Henderson would have interest. Now, CJ Henderson didn't have the most remarkable rookie season, but then again, he wasn't necessarily on the greatest team during his rookie season, and typically cornerbacks don't tend to really succeed in their rookie year, as there is a steep learning curve going from covering wide receivers in the NCAA all the way to covering wide receivers in the NFL. So I do typically like giving it at least 2 to 3 years before I officially grade a cornerback. But the fact that the Jaguars were interested in potentially moving him, which I don't really feel so sure about them doing so now, was more than enough to include CJ on this list. But I'll admit, I think he is the least likely individual on this list that will be traded. Now, a player that I think could potentially have already been traded by the time I got this video out is Chandler Jones, and here is why. If you guys remember, unfortunately, New York Jets' brand new shiny acquisition from this past offseason, Carl Lawson, ended up tearing his Achilles, which means there's a huge edge rushing void for a team whose head coach is notorious for his pass rushing in the past, which means if you combine that with the fact that Chandler Jones and the Arizona Cardinals recently haven't been able to see eye to eye in regards to a brand new contract, which, tell me if this sounds familiar, this is the reason why Chandler Jones initially got traded from the New England Patriots all those years back, then there is a pretty good possibility that Chandler Jones could potentially get traded to the New York Jets. Now, that's not to say that he is the only target on their list, but he did request a trade about a month ago from the Arizona Cardinals. And if you couple that with the fact that the Arizona Cardinals went ahead and added JJ Watt this past offseason as well, and the fact that Chandler Jones just had a really putrid season during 2020, of course, he only played in 5 games, but in those 5 games, he only had 1 sack, 5 solo tackles, and 7 QB hits. He's going into his age 31 season. I don't really know how much he could get paid at this point because his best years are clearly behind him, but Chandler Jones is also just 1 season removed from a 19 sack season that had 26 QB hits. He is a notorious sack machine for the better part of his career, peaking in 2019 with an obscene 19 sacks, but the year prior he had 13, and the year before that he had 17. Now, personally, as a NFL fan, I would love to see Chandler Jones stay, mainly because I love seeing pass rushes that have 2 remarkable edge rushers on each edge, and you have JJ Watt on one side, and then you have Chandler Jones on the other side, most probably the left side. But based off of the fact that Chandler Jones requested a trade a month ago, and the Jets' void for a pass rusher, and the fact that Robert Saleh typically works out really well with pass rushers, you saw what he was able to do with Nick Bosa in San Francisco, it makes me feel like Chandler Jones is more likely than not going to head over to the New York Jets. Now let's talk about our only other quarterback on this list that, without a doubt, I think is probably the most likely individual on this list to get traded, and that's Nick Foles. Nick Foles is sitting at the QB3 spot for the Chicago Bears. He has been a complete afterthought in Chicago, and to be honest, that wasn't really the greatest situation for him to begin with. This man has had quite possibly the most unique career I think I've ever seen. In his sophomore season in the league, he threw 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions for the Philadelphia Eagles. A year later, the Eagles decided that he probably isn't their future at quarterback. They traded him to St. Louis, and he really didn't do well for the St. Louis Rams in that one season. Eventually, he gets traded to Kansas City, which is where the Andy Reid coaching tree kind of took over. He was there as a backup before going back to Philadelphia, winning a Super Bowl in 2017, being a remarkable mentor to Carson Wentz. And after those 2 years, he went to Jacksonville and Chicago, where he just didn't look like the same quarterback anymore. So in this instance, the rumors suggest, and at least what most of the NFL wants, is to see Nick Foles going back to a situation where he was successful in, possibly being the backup to Carson Wentz, reuniting with Frank Reich. He already got a huge payday, and he's practically practically just melting on the bench in Chicago anyways. And he's actually addressed these rumors before.
Just before we came in here, we learned that Carson's going to have surgery in Indy. So in terms of that familiarity, you're talking about comfort level. Is that a spot with Frank that you would be comfortable?
Listen, Frank Reich is one of my favorite, if not favorite, coaches of all time. He understands me as a player. He understands me as a person. But, I haven't had any talks with him. I don't know. I'm a Chicago Bear right now. But I think if he knows me. He understands. I mean, y'all watched the 2017 season in the playoffs where he changed the offense and built it around me, and y'all saw what happened. So he understood my mentality as a player, and he was able to build it around me and put me in a successful position and my teammates. But that being said, they have Carson. And Carson and I have a lot of history. I have a lot of respect for Carson. He's a tremendous player. He's going through adversity once again, but he'll bounce back. And you know what? He might miss a few games, but I know he'll be back out there. But we haven't had any talks. So right now I'm a Chicago Bear, and I'm going to keep slinging with these third stringers, and we're going to dice them up.
But it's kind of a situation where why would you keep Nick Foles around if he has this huge contract and he literally is your QB3? Most teams have two quarterbacks nowadays anyway. So I think for the Chicago Bears, it might be a no-brainer. And if there's any team that really needs a backup quarterback, I'm looking at you, Dallas Cowboys. Please don't go into this season with Ben DiNucci as your go-to backup QB, especially when we don't even know if Dak Prescott could play this season. I think Nick Foles would be a fantastic get. Now, speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, we need to talk about one of their three very gifted wide receivers. No, not CeeDee Lamb. No, not Amari Cooper. Yes, we're discussing Michael Gallup. Now, ever since the selection of CeeDee Lamb in the 2020 NFL Draft, which, as electrifying of a pick as it is, I felt like it was just a bonus pick that wasn't really necessary for the Cowboys, considering how they had Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup coming off of 1,000 plus yard receiving seasons. There's now a huge issue. You see, Amari Cooper signed a $100 million contract last offseason. CeeDee Lamb is currently on a rookie scale contract. That's fantastic. You have Dak Prescott that you just paid a ton of money. You have Ezekiel Elliott that has a huge contract. You have your offensive line that, for the most part, a bulk of them are signed to crazy contracts as well, most recently being La'el Collins. You have Marcus Lawrence that is signed to a huge contract as well. You pretty much, what I'm trying to say is the Dallas Cowboys don't have any additional room to spend, which leaves Michael Gallup in this very strange predicament. Last year, without Dak Prescott under center, he still was good for 843 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, and he was targeted 105 times, which is only 8 less times than the year prior. But with CeeDee Lamb poised to have a great breakout season this year, I'm anticipating that Michael Gallup might see his targets dwindle just a little bit. And I can't imagine the Dallas Cowboys successfully wrestling with the salary cap to the point where they will be able to retain Michael Gallup, especially when I think they could get a nice little return for the man. Now, don't get me wrong, I would love for the Cowboys to keep Michael Gallup, but there's so many wide receiver needy teams. There are so many more holes on the Dallas Cowboys than the wide receiver position, and they have an abundance of riches at the wide receiver position, and they won't be able to pay Michael Gallup this offseason. So you might as well trade him this season and get something in return. Because if he does get one more 1,000 plus yard receiving season, he is going to be gone and you're going to get nothing for him. Speaking of Michaels, we have to mention one last Michael that happens to be a wide receiver as well, and that's Michael Thomas. Now, earlier we did make multiple videos about a couple of weeks ago about how Michael Thomas wasn't getting along with the New Orleans Saints, and it had to do with the management of his injury. Sean Payton was mad at Michael Thomas for the fact that he didn't get surgery earlier. Michael Thomas put out some cryptic tweet saying that he protected the New Orleans Saints by keeping his mouth shut, and after a couple of weeks, apparently Sean Payton and Michael Thomas met to clear the air. Now, bear in mind that Michael Thomas is injured. He can't come back until, I believe, late October or early November. But if you look at the New Orleans Saints, a lot of what determines whether or not Michael Thomas will be traded or not is based off of how they play this season with either Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill at the quarterback position. If they look like a above 500 team, well, this is a team that has to pay a significant value and has a huge cap hit. So even though they'll have to take a huge cap hit by trading Michael Thomas, there's no purpose in keeping an all-pro wide receiver if you don't have a quarterback to throw him the football, and if your team isn't a Super Bowl contender. You factor that with the fact that there is a team currently in Duval County whose head coach happened to coach Michael Thomas when he was in the NCAA, and there were some rumors around, and not really big rumors to the point where I'd make dedicated videos, but I have heard from a little birdies here and there that he would potentially be interested in going to play for Urban Meyer and a transcendent quarterback that they happened to draft with the #1 overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft. Now, I would love to continue giving you my list of players that I think are about to be traded this season, but we're about to get to the 17 or 16 minute point, guys, and I feel like this video has gone on for way too long, so let me know in the comment section down below if you think I missed anyone, and do me a favor and sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm to help the channel grow. If you guys want to see what I'm up to in Italy right now, check me out on Instagram and Twitter, and aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.